Calaroga Shark Media.
From Washington, D.C., where AOC is worried about Trump coming to get her, this is Ballot.
That's right. Today we have AOC BS, and it's a party in the USA. Let's hit this. Seth Meyers said, according to a new poll, 58% of Republican voters believe that convicted felons should be allowed to become president if they are elected, which is up 58% from last week. Former President Donald Trump didn't mince words when slamming President Biden's recent executive action on the southern border, calling it bullshit, while railing against it at a rally in Nevada on Sunday. Addressing his fired-up supporters in Las Vegas, Trump alleged that Biden's move was pro-invasion, encouraged human trafficking, and was essentially a gift to drug dealers. He proclaimed, "It's weak, it's ineffective, it's bullshit what he signed," prompting the crowd to chant that final profane descriptor right back at him. The executive action in question allows most asylum seekers to be turned away at the border when crossings exceed 2,500 per day, with some exceptions. Biden framed it as his only option after Republicans walked away from reviving bipartisan border legislation, claiming Trump told the GOP to oppose it as a cynical political move. But Trump wasn't buying it, dismissing the policy as too late and meaningless, a mere PR ploy. He suggested Biden should simply reinstate every single border policy from his own administration if he truly wanted to stop the invasion. Of course, Trump's hardline posturing conveniently ignores how his draconian policies arguably created many of the very issues Biden is now grappling with at the border. But nuance has never been the Donald strong suit. Bullshit may not be the most presidential term, but it does succinctly capture Trump's unvarnished thoughts on Biden's attempt to solve an issue his own policies seriously exacerbated. Sometimes crude dismissiveness is its own unique art form. In another chapter of the ongoing legal saga, former President Donald Trump is slated for a pre-sentencing interview with a probation officer today. The routine pre-sentencing meeting, which will be conducted virtually, allows the probation department to gather information and submit a report to help guide Judge Juan Merchan in determining Trump's ultimate punishment. His sentencing date is set for July 11th. Of course, Trump being Trump, you just know he's going to treat this whole song and dance with his trademark pugnacious indignation. A routine interview to gather background on his illustrious career of criminality and untrustworthiness? Why, he ought to be offended at the very notion. You know Trump's legal eagles are likely sharpening their letter-writing quills as we speak to bombard Judge Merchan with glowing character testimonials from only the finest of unimpeachable luminaries. I'm sure testaments from illustrious personages like the My Pillow guy and Rudy Giuliani will really sway the jurist. The dynamic duo of AOC and Trump trading dramatic jabs once again. This time, the Democratic firebrand is fretting that the former president would literally throw her behind bars if he reclaims the White House in 2024. In an interview, Ocasio-Cortez didn't mince words about her fear that Trump is out of his mind and would make good on his lock her up mantra that was such a hit at his raucous rallies. She's taking him at his word that he'd try rounding up his political opponents this time around. Now, is the idea of President Trump actually jailing AOC for existing a tad far-fetched and alarmist? Perhaps, but you can't really blame the Congresswoman for having PTSD-style flashbacks to 2016's unhinged partisan bloodsport. Of course, Trump's team is pushing back, claiming any revenge talk is just more fake news from his unhinged haters. He'd never actually follow through on those ominous authoritarian intimations and persecute his political foes, right? Right. At last week's taping of Jimmy Kimmel's late-night show, where he was interviewing Vice President Kamala Harris, members of the anti-war activist group Code Pink caused quite the ruckus. Footage shared by the group shows several protesters in the audience repeatedly interrupting and shouting phrases like, "Stop the genocide!" and "You're a murderer" at Harris. At first, Kimmel and the VP tried to ignore it, but security soon started removing the disruptive audience members. Perhaps most controversially, the protesters claim they were illegally imprisoned by security, locking them in the outdoor atrium area of the theater after the taping. They're now demanding Kimmel apologize for any excessive use of force by staff against the peaceful demonstrators. None of the interruptions actually made the final broadcast, as Jimmy and Kowal's unsurprisingly scrubbed that whole messy fracas from the episode aired on TV. Can't you just picture the sheer panic on some poor producer's face as protesters started disrupting the proceedings? I'm sure their Xanax budget saw a major spike that day. Portions of today's program were made with the help of AI. Portions of today's news were made with BS and AOC.